are listening to Art That Saved My Life with your host, Justin Fink. Hello, everyone, and welcome back. I'm so happy that you're joining me once again. And if this is your first time being with us, welcome. I'm really excited for the episode that I have in store for you today. It's a chat with a very good friend of mine, Lindsey Wayland. I met Lindsey at a camp named Camp Welokai. I first went to this camp back in 2001 when I was 14 years old, and I've been coming back ever since. It's a beautiful camp centered around a few really powerful tenets for healing. The first one for me is unconditional belonging. Absolutely everyone who goes to this camp is treated like an equal. Another thing I love about this camp is that it's really focused on everyone being their true selves. The director of the camp, Dr. Tim Jordan, I'm sure he's listening. I'm going to get a letter from his lawyers. Tim really does a great job from day one of creating this atmosphere of authenticity where no one has to play games. There's no talking behind each other's back. If anyone feels unsafe, it's okay to speak up. And because of this and his powerful leadership and just the beautiful staff he assembles each week, all the campers and staff alike are able to just be themselves and let go of caring so much what other people are thinking of them. And it's such a beautiful experience. And I always leave the week, they're week-long sessions, and I always leave the week just with such a nurtured feeling in my heart. So I met Lindsey at camp, and there's about, almost like a 15-year age difference. But, when it comes to souls, age doesn't mean anything. She's still a good, dear friend to me. And Lindsey is a musician and a wonderful musician is that. I have a fond memory of a camp talent show. She must have been 12 years old, I want to say, and she sat on stage and she had her acoustic guitar, which was twice the size of her because she was so short. And she started singing and my jaw just hit the floor. She had this voice that was so mature for her age and so full of life and sorrow and heartbreak. You would think she was, well into her adulthood, just the gravity and the depth of her performance. And ever since then, I've been waiting. I'm still waiting for her to really make her mark. I want to hear what she has to offer. So I really hope this episode inspires her because she's got a lot to give. And I'm sure you'll agree after listening to this episode. So this is a beautiful episode about really, what it means being an old soul in this world, what it means to feel it all, navigating the very murky and tricky waters of depression. We talk about severe depression here, depression that needs to be hospitalized. And Lindsey masterfully really takes us through how she was able to process such an experience. And of course, she carries with her a album by a brilliant artist that really spoke to her at that time. So I hope you're as touched by this episode that I was in talking to Lindsey. I feel like there's a lot of really useful information here if you suffer from depression, if you know anyone who suffers from depression. I think there's a lot of really good insights here that I wish more people knew. Well, with that said, I am eternally grateful for your ears and your attention and your hearts, and I hope you enjoy.
I remember when I was a kid and I was walking around by myself or playing by myself, I'd be singing to myself and just writing short little songs in my head.
Oh, awesome.
Yeah. And then eventually it got to the point where I was like, I think I want to play an instrument
Mhm.
and I would be in my bedroom and I'd stand on my bed and I would play my CDs and I would play air guitar along to them,
Ah.
hoping that my parents would walk by and see me and be like, that
Oh.
girl needs a guitar.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, and then it's funny the way it worked out because I bought my sister a guitar and I was like, well, now I have to have one. Like if I didn't want to have one before this,
Uh,
I need to have one now. But yeah, and then I that just kind of took off from there. Once I had the guitar, I had something to kind of like back me up. So I
mm.
felt a lot more comfortable singing in front of people.
Mhm.
Yeah, I did like a few open mic nights when I was in high school. But
Mhm.
I've always had an issue with like stage fright and anxiety. It's
Mm.
prevented me from doing a lot of like live performances, but now as an
Mhm.
adult, now that I'm getting a handle on some stuff, like I feel a lot more confident and like
Oh,
that might be
good.
a path that I start pursuing.
So what is that fear about for you? Because I can say objectively without a doubt, like you have talent. Is that something you doubt?
I think a big issue of mine has been like I know that I am either average or above average in
Mhm.
my talents, but I have a problem with like comparing myself to people that are already famous.
Of course.
And like when I was a kid, I have more of an understanding now, especially with the major that I'm in seeing like how much work actually goes into a finished product.
Mm. Hmm.
And you know, like the entire teams of people that are behind these artists that are putting out these songs or that have these crazy insane vocals. Um,
Hmm.
and so yeah, I think part of it was just like I felt like I wasn't good enough and that if
Mm.
I pursued it and I failed, that like there it wouldn't be a win at all. Yeah, I think that's definitely a really big piece of it. The other piece being like, what if I can't? Which is like a silly reason not to try, is just
Mm.
because you fear that
Mm.
like what if you're not able to do it? But
Mm.
I think that was part of it was just like what if this actually isn't something that I can't do or that
Yeah.
doesn't
Yeah.
work out for me or I end up not liking it
Hmm.
because music is such a big part of my life.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense that you don't want to have a negative association with it, that fear of not just failure, but also like tainting something so sacred to you. So yeah, have you recorded stuff in the past? Like are there any, is there any music out there?
No originals. That has been my other struggle
Hmm.
with music is that when I was a kid and I was by myself, I could sing, I could write about anything, really silly stuff.
Hmm.
Now as an adult, I feel so much pressure in like getting it to come out right, if that
Mm.
makes sense. Like
Mm.
being able, I struggle even just talking, like communicating my feelings sometimes, or even trying
Mm.
to like take
Mm.
take the whole feeling and put it into words.
Mm.
And so oftentimes when I sit down to write, it's like, well, how much time do we have? Like, what do I want to get into? But I mean, I definitely like mess around with stuff in terms of like, I'll listen to songs and I'll freestyle on guitar or
Hmm.
I'll hear lyrics in my head and then I start thinking about like, okay, what kind of backtrack would go along with this? Like,
Mm.
what would I do with this?
Mm.
I don't have anything recorded that's like out on streaming or anything. I have like covers of stuff on YouTube from
Hmm.
when I was 15 singing in my bathroom.
Can't give up your heart when it's already occupied. If you got a good one, don't give him up for greed. If it's not enough, then baby, just leave. You never know the pieces you leave behind. Just leave. If you stick around and live a lie, just leave. Let it go if you're not satisfied. Just leave, just leave, just leave. Walk away and say goodbye.
But that's about as far as I've gotten.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's again just a remarkable thing to me. I think I heard you describe yourself as average or slightly above average, and that's not my impression at all.
Well, thank you.
But I think it just goes to show of because I think there are a lot of I guess it's pretty tricky to get in this territory, but I'm going to say it anyways. There are a lot of very average artists out there, and I guess when I say average, I just mean like uninspired or like, okay, I've heard this a million times before.
Yeah.
Um, but they do have the confidence, they do have the drive, and because of that, there's much more of them out there, and
Yeah,
it's easy to look around and get discouraged at that, but I'm really not saying that to rescue you, and I wouldn't say it if I didn't believe it, but you've always been someone that I've wanted to see, flourish, and time's not up, obviously. I think
yeah,
you're still on the path of finding yourself, basically, artistically speaking, for sure. Um,
definitely.
yeah, and yeah, just like communication, just like speaking, as you said, that pressure is tremendous. And for me, that pressure is who am I supposed to be, or who does this person want me to be, or who do I need to be to survive or get what I want out of life? And yeah, pressure is a total creativity killer,
Yeah,
I think pressure is great if you're trying to get shit done. But creativity doesn't exist in that realm. Rulers make bad lovers, as Stevie Nicks said,
yeah,
and I think that's always been true in my life, is that the more fear there's been in my psyche, the less I've been able to get out what's inside my heart. And that's really painful. That creates that barrier between what in you wants to come out and what's like those filters create such a barrier of loneliness. All that stuff just lives in you and festers, like a
yeah.
bacteria even. But anyway, so tell us about the artist you picked for today.
Yeah, so I believe the name is pronounced Indigo De Souza or De
Mhm.
Souza.
To your doorstep, I walk up to your doorstep. Look through the window. I don't think anybody's home. I'll come again tomorrow. I don't think
I love like her writing style. Is probably one of my favorite things. Just the vocabulary that she uses. I feel like you don't hear a ton of it in like other music.
Mhm.
She's very like raw and real and
Mm.
uses these metaphors and analogies that just like I feel like universally make sense.
Mm.
And so like when she sings, it just like speaks to me and like touches my heart really deeply.
Mm.
She's got another song on another album just about like how she loves the water. I think that's the name of the song. It's just the water.
Mhm.
And it's haunting and beautiful and so simple yet such a broad concept of just like there's this thing and when you're near it or when you're in it like you love it and it speaks to you. So one of my favorite things about her for sure.
That's great. How did you discover her?
This was the first album that I heard by her. I believe it was one of the first tracks, either How I Get Myself Killed or Take Off Your Pants.
Hmm.
And I heard this and I think it was Take Off Your Pants. That song has like a little bit more of an upbeat feel compared to the
Mhm.
other songs on this album. The message is like not, it's not a fun message, but
Yeah.
um, yeah, I heard that song and then I checked out the rest of it. And it happened to be during a time in my life where I just like, I needed to hear this stuff. And I, kind of like what you're talking about earlier of, it can feel lonely and misunderstood when you don't fit in with everybody else. And,
Mhm.
hearing somebody speak about their experience and the way that she did and do it so creatively, I was like, I need to hear this all the time. Like I want it. I wish I could
Mm.
take like an IV and like put it in my arm and like feel it in my
Yeah.
body.
Wow.
So yeah, just I relate to that a lot in the sense of like it just sounds like someone who has gone through so much. And like the heaviness of it, she talks about a lot. Yeah, just she's I follow her on Instagram. She talks a lot, like her Instagram posts are very, very personal, even though it's like from her artist page, which is really cool. But
Mm.
she talks about like what she's going through in life and how she's feeling. And yeah, she's talked about feeling very sensitive, like even as a kid. And I like that felt like my life story when I was a child. I was just like, everything was so intense. Sadness was so intense, embarrassment was so intense, happiness was just as intense, just more fleeting than some of these other emotions.
Right.
Yeah, she's definitely a sensitive girl, just like me.
I don't feel at home in this house anymore. Which way will I run when I'm over you? I don't feel.
And I think I would almost demand that from any artist that I listen to. I don't think I want to listen to music from people who aren't sensitive.
Yeah.
Because it's like, what are you even picking up on then?
Yeah.
Where is this coming from? Yeah, and that sensitivity. Now, would you have sensitivity to like literally your senses as well? Like, was the world like really loud and
I don't know about senses. I would say that thing like senses would like stick with me. Yeah, whatever I was perceiving. And I was definitely very like receptive to energy from other people. I like have a memory of me and my mom at the zoo when I was a kid, and I saw some lady faint, like fall over and faint. And they had her on the floor, and she's got her legs above her head, and I remember like turning to my mom and be like, we need to leave. Like I'm freaking out right now. I feel so bad for this lady. Like I'm scared that it's going to happen to me. And yeah, so just stuff like that. Or like I was like really young. I was like 5 years old. I saw a commercial for kids with cancer on the TV. It was like some like St. Jude's or something like that. And I remember having to go to my aunt and be like, it feels like my heart is like being ripped open right now, because I just felt so deeply for these kids. And like, yeah.
Wow. And how you said you were like 5 or
I was probably 5 or 6 then.
5 or
Yeah.
6. Wow. Wow. It's amazing. Yeah. So a lot of empathy, a lot of picking up on just the vibes around you and other people. Yeah. It has the ability to make the world feel very intimidating.
Around me. And the love I feel is so powerful. It can take you anywhere. And the love I feel is so very real. It'll drag you down.
Because I don't know if you've noticed, but there's not a lot of very happy people out there. There's a lot of people struggle, day in and day out, and even the ones who don't show it, as an empath, you can feel that, right?
Yeah.
And again, if you're young and you don't have a lot of guidance on that, it's easy to feel like there's something wrong with you, or you're all alone, or this world's just a scary place. I've come to appreciate that to be sensitive is one thing. It's actually good. It's really a good asset to be sensitive. Any animal in nature that is sensitive is more likely to survive because, there's, and not only that, there's actually a lot of beautiful things in this world that being sensitive means you can take in and enjoy. But it's being sensitive and feeling alone. It's being sensitive and having any shame about who you are that makes your suffering unique, or like a little more elevated than say your average person. So with that said, we have this. So the specific album is named "I Love My Mom." Is that true? Do you love your mom?
I love my mom.
Okay. So far we've got a direct link there.
Oh yeah.
So tell me about where you were in life when you discovered this album.
Yeah, so this was like in the first month of 2021. I started listening to this album.
Mhm.
It was, I mean, 2020 obviously was a hard year for everyone with COVID
Yeah.
and the world changing and just like so much newness. Um, I know a lot of generations like had never experienced a pandemic at that point, and so
Mm.
and especially in this age where like we're so connected with each other via
Mhm.
the internet and our phones and stuff like that, and then to
Yeah.
be isolated like obviously is super hard.
Yeah.
I was so depressed at this time that
Mm.
the isolation and like the lockdown really didn't affect my life much.
Mhm.
So I was going through like a totally different set of
Mm.
struggles in 2020.
Mm.
Yeah, just in and out of mental hospitals. Like I think it was 3 or 4 times.
Oh, wow. Wow.
Starting before COVID, and then just kind of like leaked into the rest of the year.
Wow.
And I was going through like a bad breakup kind of over and over again with a guy who
Mm.
I thought was going to be the person that I was going to marry, and
Mm.
that I wanted to spend the rest of my life with. And so, yeah, just the first time that it ever really happened to me. He was my first love too. So it was like I had never felt this way about anyone before.
Wow.
So yeah, just really confusing and really scary. And that aspect didn't help like the mental health side of things at all, because I'm trying to better myself, and it felt like every time I like would pick myself back up and like get my bootstraps back up,
Mm.
that he would come back into my life and just like things would go to shit again.
Mm. Mm.
Yeah, so rough time in 2020 with all that, and then
Mhm.
in 2021, around the time I started listening to this album, it kind of occurred to me that like I'm gonna need to change some things and
Mm. Mm.
habits and things like that. And
Mm.
yeah, ultimately decided to move to New York City because I needed to get away and I just get like not just like headspace, but like physical space away from the
Mm.
life that I had been living for so long, and
Yeah.
um, just kind of start over. So this album kind of like got me through all of that.
As I feel right now. And I just don't need you like I thought I did. In your arms at night. And if you ghost on me,
The sad songs got me through sorting out like how I felt and putting words to how I felt, and the more lighthearted songs obviously like brought some joy into my life, which was really nice.
Yeah.
But yeah, made me feel like a lot less lonely for sure, and like like
Mm.
even if we have two separate experiences, you might like I can still feel the same way as someone.
That's beautiful. And so rough you had to go through that. I didn't know that you were in different hospitals. And that was generally only do that if you're feeling unsafe, like if you're a threat to yourself. Were you having thoughts? Were there attempts? Were you?
The first few times that I was in there was because it was like I was laying in bed like all day long. I wasn't doing anything. I was only getting up to like go to the bathroom essentially,
Oh,
and
wow.
like eat just enough to like keep me alive.
Mm.
And so at that time I'm still living with my parents, and they I was in therapy, I was on medications, I was trying different stuff. And so for them, the hospital was more of like let's get you in and get you leveled out,
Mm.
so that you have like a schedule that you have to adhere to,
Mm.
and you actually like if you want to get out of, because they make the hospital miserable on purpose. It's not a fun place to be. You
Yeah.
don't want to stay there. So yeah, it would kind of like snap me out of it most of the time.
Mm.
And they would put me back on like heavy doses of medications just to kind of like get me leveled out.
Mm.
But then the last time that I was in the hospital, I did have a suicide attempt. Just
Wow.
as one of those like throwing caution to the wind and being like, I don't know what else to do.
Mm.
I've been trying these things. I've been in and out of the hospital. It kind of seems like nothing is working. I didn't necessarily like want to like kill myself, but definitely didn't want to be around anymore. The rewards were not worth the risks of life anymore. Like the lows were so low that like the happiness was not occurring frequently enough to like balance it out.
I don't need anyone to love me. I love my mom more than any of you fools. I don't need anyone to love me. I love my Tom more than driving away from a party after everything's over and everyone's gone and the gods are still looking on. And if you ghost on me again,
Yeah. So that was but like ultimately led me to finding a different therapist, that led me to reevaluating my life, that led me to like making more goals for myself and having things to look forward to, and then pushing me to move. It all kind of happened for a reason.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And thank you for sharing all that. I think there's a lot of stigma, there's a lot of shame around being in a place like that. I think in our culture, we really value like having your shit together. Even if it's not like a happy kind of having your shit together, it's more like the more in control you are, the more you're respected, it seems.
Yeah.
So going to a place like that is admitting like I don't know what I'm doing. Like I
Yeah.
whatever's going on up here, it's not working. I don't have a better option, so I need help, right? Like
Right.
I'm taking my car to a mechanic because it just keeps driving in circles, right? Like
Yeah.
yeah, I mean it takes a lot of bravery to own that, and I think it's beautiful because as I hear you sharing that, I don't sense a lot of shame from you, like you shared that it which is often the case is, when we have these dysfunctional patterns, sometimes we do have to hit our rock bottom more than once to finally be like, all right, I got to change something, like
Yeah.
I'm open basically, and yeah, I relate to that. There's definitely, especially around that time, I definitely had a similar kind of mental health crisis that at the time I thought was a total nightmare, total, that something's gone horribly wrong. But now I look back, it's like, no, it was just the old was leaving, it was just like these old patterns, these old ways of viewing myself, they ran their course, right? And
Yeah.
I just didn't have anything to replace them with, and
Yeah.
that's a scary feeling, and one that I think most of us don't ever want to feel.
Yeah.
But what I have found is that when you have gone through something like that, it makes you more flexible. It
For
makes
sure.
your mind softer, and you're able to lead with your heart more because you've had that experience already, of surrendering, of
Yeah.
letting go of your opinions and your beliefs. Yeah, there's definitely a really profound silver lining in all of it. So what it sounds like to me is that, 2020, and I think this is true, like you said, for all of us, was kind of like crisis mode. Like you were, just surviving and depression and pain, obviously. And then you moved to New York, and this album sounds like you finally were starting to actually like feel what you needed to feel to actually heal.
Yeah.
Those hospitals are not designed for healing, like you said. They're designed for, let's stabilize you and get you the hell out of here.
Yeah. Yeah.
I am curious, just to hear a little bit about like what was your experience like in those hospitals? I think that's the experience. I was locked up, if you will, when I was 14, so I have some experience with it, but I think it's one that not a lot of people really knows what happens in those places. What was your
Yeah.
experience? What was your experience like? How would you describe it?
Different at every place. Most, I don't want to say most. There are a good amount of hospitals that have psychiatric wards already on them.
Mhm.
So I utilized some of those. I did also go to another hospital that was like just for inpatient, and different like kind of categories of those inpatient things. So like eating disorder unit, an addiction unit, mental health, stuff like that. What surprised me the most is that like it's not just people who are struggling mentally. I met a lot of people like in these hospitals because there's not really a whole lot to do while you're in there. So I would meet people that were there because they didn't have anywhere to stay for the night, and it was safer to admit themselves into a hospital. And of course, like why they don't have anywhere to stay is a different set of issues, but like it was basically just like I need somewhere to sleep. I met people who were violent towards other people. I met people who were violent towards themselves. I met somebody. I was in a hospital one time, and it might just be the city that I live in, but somebody that I went to college with was in there at the same time. So it was like just a crazy coincidence that someone that I saw on a regular basis, like was struggling, and I had no idea, and probably the same for them, vice versa. Yeah, like I said, you don't do much in them. You essentially like wake up and you have scheduled things throughout the day to get you out of bed. You have like meal times, and they have like art therapy, and I mean, you get smoke breaks, and yeah, really boring. You watch TV and maybe play cards with people, but the main thing is like just getting you leveled and getting you balanced. And when you start participating in things, that's kind of how they know that, maybe it's time to get you back out into the world. I always felt very lonely in them. Like I would be in the booking room. Booking room is makes me sound like I was going to prison. Like the intake room. Yeah. And I'd be most of the time with my mom. And, a couple hours would go by and I'd be like, I regret it. I want to go home. Like, I want to go be sad on my own time. Like maybe this isn't the right thing to do. But, at that point, there's really no going back. So, yeah. And then, I mean, once you're in there, like I would just be so sad, and I would miss my family, and kind of realize like, there's a reason why I'm not gone. And there's still people I love that love me and are kind of willing to go through the thick of it with me just to see me out on the other side.
And I will hold you. I will hold you. I will hold you. I will hold you. And I will hold you. I will hold you.
Really beautiful. How would you describe because I think it is a kind of nebulous experience. Everyone experiences differently. How would you describe, because it sounds like the biggest issue or the biggest struggle was depression. How would you describe your experience of depression? How would you describe it to someone who's like, I've never been depressed, whoever that guy is, what does it feel like for you?
Like I said before, like I feel more sensitive than I think like a lot of people. And so I feel like very intensely. When I feel sad, it feels like, you feel that feeling of like your heart dropping down into like your pelvis. When I feel anxious, like I can physically see my heart beating through my shirt. Depression for me was just this weird onset of like, I don't want to feel that anymore. Like, I don't want to feel like this. It's like a mixture of like really intense emotions, but also not like the yearning for numbness, for it to just be like done and over. And that started for me probably when I was like a freshman in high school. I remember like, breaking up with my boyfriend because I was feeling like, what am I doing this for? Like, I don't actually like this person. And started like isolating more and getting a little bit more like agitated, not as patient. I didn't want anybody to like touch me, and even just a gentle like shoulder or hold hands or whatever. And I think a lot of it was assumed to just be like teenage angst. But then after a while, I started, I had a period of time where I had a pretty big issue with substance abuse. And that was kind of like the this is how I'm going to medicate myself. This is how I'm going to like numb myself and kind of like have more control over my emotions.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I had like when I was like solely just depressed and not using drugs, like had a lot of just like, I don't feel joy anymore. I don't really enjoy doing things anymore.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously I love my friends and I love my family, but like, it just doesn't, you don't feel, the way that you have felt about them. Yeah. So just a lot of like, it felt like something was absent from me but like nothing had changed. Like I didn't know what it was.
More than likely, because I think 14 was when all of my mental health struggles arose too, and I think a lot of it has to do with puberty. Of just it was one thing to be a sensitive young child, but then to become a teenager, and now emotions for everyone are amplified. It makes sense that there'd be some part of the brain that said like, okay, we got to turn this down somehow, and I don't know what else to do with these big feelings, basically.
Yeah. Yeah.
And yeah, the biggest casualty in that is yes, depression does help us not feel so much, but it also it's like all feelings are connected on one wheel, so, and you can't just turn down the ones you don't like, basically. So the fear, the sorrow, you turn that down, you're also turning down the joy and the love and the sense of connection, right? Like our feelings allow us to feel that love and connection with others. So it's a drastic trade-off, basically. It's like,
Oh yeah.
you know, what do you think, looking back, 14-year-old Lindsey, what, if anything, if you were your own mother at the time, and this isn't to put your own mother on blast, but it's just, that nobody, that's the thing too, is that like nobody's inside of us, nobody knows what we're
Mhm.
truly going through, right? But knowing what you know about what you truly went through, what do you think you needed more than anything? What, if anything, could have prevented your brain from saying, I need to shut this all down?
Ooh, that's a really interesting question. Self-love feels like a cop-out answer because I would say that it's some of that, but I think also
Mhm.
like just like someone reinforcing like
Mhm.
there's not anything like wrong with me.
Mhm.
And that yeah, just because I felt different, like also does not and should not equal like you shouldn't like yourself.
Right.
I feel like that's like something that I'm still like to this day trying to accept, that like there's parts of myself that I still really don't like, and that I'm working on or whatever. But as a kid it felt so like no, like don't say that, like you just need to love yourself and
Mhm.
then you'll be happy.
Mhm.
And taking this like really complex idea of like there's nothing wrong with you and whoever you are in this moment is completely fine, and like kind of like really dumbed it down into just like, oh, love yourself. um
Yeah.
and I think that I just felt like really lonely then too. I had yet to meet the people that really made me feel seen. I had camp, of course, but
Mhm.
that's only a week out of the year, and
Right.
most people don't act like how they do in camp. When I'm at camp, I have people that are seeing me to my full potential. They recognize that I'm a cool person or whatever, but they're able to articulate like what it is about me that they like so much, or
Yeah.
what it is about me that like draws them. So I didn't have a lot of that like as a kid, and I had a lot of friends move away when I was young too. So I think that maybe played a part in it, of like I felt like I didn't have anyone that like really understood me.
Mhm.
And if I did, like, we would be friends for a couple of years, and then because of a bad coincidence, like they would end up moving away. So yeah, I think if little eighth grade me or freshman year me was
Mhm.
reminded that like there is still so much time, even though it might be far away, even if it's in like the second half of my life, like the joy that I will feel from those people and from what I'm doing at that time in my life will completely overtake whatever sadness I felt as a kid.
Yeah.
And I always had a hard time like listening to people try to like bring me up or like be positive around me, because it felt very invalidating of like,
Mm.
oh yeah, you might be sad, but later down the line, you're going to be happier. So I think another person, like another adult, or even just a friend acknowledging like what you have going on is really real. And like, it doesn't have anything to do with like something being wrong with you. It's just like tons of people feel this way. And like, there's not a lot of people talking about it.
Yeah, I mean, as far as I'm concerned, I think you hit the nail on the head for sure. And yeah, self-love does feel like a cop out, but to me, love is what you just said, which is just saying, like I'll take you as you are, like I'll embrace you as you are. That's what love is, right? And yeah, so it sounded like at 14 years old, you thought there was something wrong with you, but really you just didn't know what it meant to be human. That all of this is normal and part of the game. Yeah, I know that when I'm in shame or those pieces of me that there are shame around, then I don't share them with people. And then because of that, they stay hidden for longer. And it's just a nasty, nasty cycle. So when it's normal, it becomes easier to express whatever's inside of you. You don't have to, filter what people are seeing. So, with all that said, let's get back to this album here. I Love My Mom. So let's just discuss, a few of the songs that like really resonate with you. Like what's the first one that comes to mind?
I would say The Sun Is Bad is probably the big one for me.
Honey, I miss you, but I don't need to see you. I'm jealous of those other girls, but I don't need to keep you. I'm full, and I cannot take no more. I'm full, and I mean it. The sun just don't rise up for me this time. The sun just don't rise up for us tonight. Honey.
Yeah, what do you love about that song?
I would say even just like listening to it now, and I have listened to this album, not to brag or anything, but maybe 100 times. Like I
Sure.
love this album so much. And even listening to this song right now with you, like I'm getting goosebumps like on my body. It just it's a very visceral experience for me.
Mhm.
The lyrics of this song are like everything that I wish I could have said when I'm going through this stuff with this guy. A lot of these songs in this helped me kind of sort out these feelings that I had when I was going through this breakup. And it was a really intense, the last time we broke up, it was like really bad, like fighting in the car for 4 or 5 hours at a time, for weeks at a time. And just like having it occupy so much of my brain space and being told like, one thing happened when it happened a different way for me. I was really confused about the way that I felt and how I thought I should feel and how I actually felt. And I had like no words to describe what was going on in my body and my brain. And I had all these things that I wanted to say, but I didn't know how to say them. And I didn't know if, me saying one thing would overshadow something that was like more important. Her talking about, I'm jealous of those other girls, but I don't need to keep you. Is how I felt about like having to let go of this person, that I wanted to be in their life so bad. And it felt like when we were together, like we had very magical moments, and the idea of him having that with somebody else was like so heart-wrenching for me. Yeah, listening to her describe that, and then how the sun just doesn't rise up for me was kind of the conclusion that I came to of like, this thing that happened to me, like, I don't know if I will ever feel good about it. I don't know if I'm ever going to see a silver lining. It's just like, it might just be a shitty thing that happened. And then I have to leave it at that. There's not, I can think about it and I can spin it however many ways in my head that I want to spin it, but it just might not be good. Like, it's just an unfortunate thing that happened, and very unfortunate the way that the whole situation went down. And so song, she goes on to say, like, I'm sorry that I got angry when you got sad, which was I can't take it back. And I felt that way, like fighting a lot with this person. I felt like when we were actively like in these arguments, I felt very defensive and very like, of course I feel this way and this is the way things happen for me. And I can't believe that like you don't see it this way. Like there was a lot of anger behind it. But then I would go home and I would be away from him and I would be like doubting myself and questioning myself and saying, well, like, I've apparently hurt this person that I love so dearly. That I'd never wanted to hurt this person in my life, and I did it. Dealing with those emotions too, like I feel like the guilt kind of like overshadowed all the anger, and by the end, it was like I don't even know what happened anymore. I don't know who to believe. I don't know what to believe, and it just left me with this bad aftertaste of like I can't trust myself, and maybe the way that I see things is like not right or just like outright wrong. Like maybe I'm delusional like about everything. So yeah, very like leading to like big existential crises.
Totally. Yeah. And how could you not just be bedridden with those types of thoughts? How could you even pretend to go about your day when you feel that way?
Yeah.
And I can see the connection between like, okay, 14-year-old, you start to realize there might be something wrong with me. I'm different, the most painful part of that shame is actually feeling like unlovable, like feeling like I might not be capable of intimacy. And when we have beliefs like that, our relationships tend to play into their hand. I imagine that was a big part of your pain of just, a relationship, just that longing for intimacy. And it's just like, what the fuck, what is all these barriers and to feel deficient, somehow, I think is a very common response to a relationship gone so awry like that. It's hard not to.
I don't want to say that this was like the first time that I ever like hurt somebody, because I'm sure I did it unintentionally. And then, maybe I am the villain in somebody else's story that I'm completely unaware of. But like this situation was the first time where like I was not entirely proud of, what had happened. And that just kind of like spiraled into this, like, maybe I'm a bad person and kind of like just like completely tearing down like all these things that I thought that I knew about myself, just because of like one situation that happened. And it was just like the first time I realized like this is part of life and I'm going to keep doing this. And that was also like a very bad, just like drove me deeper into the depression of like, I'm going to keep doing this. There's no way that I can go the rest of my life without hurting someone. Like I can't do that. I can't handle that. I have to do this over and over again for the rest of my life. So yeah, that was like such an overwhelming feeling.
And you're such a loving, empathic person. Like that's who you are at your core, right? Like at 5 years old, your heart was breaking for these kids on the TV. So like that's just who you are, right? So to me, it sounds like you felt like somehow like you're a liability. Like that's what I hear you saying is like there's something dangerous in me. Like I should just keep myself in a cave and save the world. Which is so heartbreaking. It's so heartbreaking, especially for anyone who knows you, who knows how, just lovable and loving you are, and how much of a positive impact you are to others. To hear you going through that is so heartbreaking, and such again, just like, there was a lot of confusion there, a lot of,
For sure.
A bigger perspective that just wasn't attained yet, of understanding. But yeah. I mean, what a painful feeling. I love all these people, but I'm just going to hurt them.
Yeah.
Are there other songs you want to talk about?
Yeah. I had to get out. The last song. It's another heavy one. I promise we'll listen to some more upbeat ones in a second. But,
no, it's fine.
Yeah, this one, I'll let you listen to it and then,
yeah.
I had to get out. My body couldn't weather the drought. And if I could have stayed, you wouldn't see me this way. But we don't always get what we want.
Very pretty.
Yeah. This stays pretty stripped, just her vocals and the guitar, which I love. It's so intense.
Yeah.
And she has a really good balance on this album, to speak technically, of like those songs that are like stripped down, like this one, and then she's got a few, I think like one or two that start out like this, but then they get a little bit heavier,
Right.
with the drums coming in and the bass and all that, and then she's got some that are just like bops from beginning to end. But yeah, this song kind of speaks to my experience of like wanting to leave St. Louis and move to New York, feeling like I physically like had to get out of there. She says like my body couldn't weather the drought, and then in another verse she says like my skin was losing its shine, which is just kind of like how it felt being here. Like I was like withering away. She goes on in the song, like later on as well, to say like, I know that I'm heavy and I'm sorry for crushing you, which I feel like is like a very common experience with people who have mental health issues. Like it feels so burdensome to place on somebody else because it's not like, there's not a whole lot that other people can do for you. It feels like such a individual battle, which like, I've grown and I know now that that's not exactly the case, but
Right.
Definitely as a kid, it was like, well, this is my brain, so it's my problem, it's my life. Again, we have this like mentality like today of like, you create your own reality, you are in charge of your own life. I think it's true to an extent. I think that like, obviously you can change things for yourself. Again, kind of a cop-out answer, because it's like, well, sometimes you can't just pull yourself up by your bootstraps and like keep going.
Right.
It's not realistic. So it feels very burdensome, like just a battle that like, it's like, this is my battle and I have to fight it. And so I know that like there were a lot of people around me, like especially within my family, that wanted to help, but just like didn't know what to do. I had like friendships end because I couldn't communicate, and I couldn't keep up with like trying to act normal for other people.
Why must everything happen at once?
Yeah, I think you touched upon like a really important message about mental health. Like you said, that narrative of you create your own reality. Like, okay, yeah, that is true. What we think does influence how we perceive reality. But I think one of the worst quicksand feelings when you are in a depressive state is that voice in the back of the head that says, there is like a way out of this. I'm just not doing it right. Like that feeling of, like you said, this is my problem and I got to figure it out. And then it pulls you deeper and deeper into it. And the longer it goes, the more you feel like a failure. Like, why do I suck at depression?
It definitely adds to that feeling of like, there's something wrong with me. Cause like this is my fault. If I'm not doing this right, like there must be something intrinsically like within me that is just fundamentally not working the way that it should be.
Yeah. Yeah. And for me, what has helped a lot with my healing is actually letting go of control, letting go of this feeling like I have to create this perfect reality. And I guess this is the essence of mindfulness, of just acknowledging there is just a reality, and to actually just to be curious about what that reality is, and to open up to it, so like right now, I'm having like depressive feelings, like that's real for me. Therefore, it's a part of reality. I don't need to argue with it. And in my life, the more I've embraced that, the less I find myself in long-term spells. It's like that.
Yeah.
If there's any trick, to getting yourself out of it, it is radical acceptance. It is, just saying, okay, this is what I'm feeling right now.
Yeah.
But it can take a lot of convincing, experience to realize it's actually okay. It's okay that you feel depressed because, like you said, to acknowledge, my depression has a toll on relationships, right? So
Mhm.
then again, back to how like I'm a liability to people, I'm a burden somehow. So if you have that feeling, that creates this pressure to fix it. It creates a sense of this is bad, this needs to go away.
Yeah.
Um, and then it's just going to stick around longer, right? The more you resist it. And part of that too, I think it's something that I'm guessing you're learning in your life, and I'm continuing to learn in my life, is that there's space for all of us in healthy relationships.
Yeah.
Someone who truly loves us will allow us to be depressed if we're depressed or happy if we're happy, right? That we don't have to argue with ourselves to make another person happy, right? I wish I would have learned that a long time ago. It would have saved myself a lot of grief.
Yeah.
But that's life for you. So yeah, what else? What other songs?
I think that Good Heart would be a good one to listen to as well. This is one of
Mm.
it's not as serious.
Something that I said, is it the way I stood so still and never moved? Now every dirty dish is in a mood, and so are you. He's not on our side, but I could save you if you were
I made a mental note of keeping this in my arsenal, but it's so cool how the bass follows the vocal melody at one point.
Mhm.
That's like a really cool choice.
Yeah.
That's cool. So, what do you love about this song?
Lyrics I'll save for the second half because I feel like I always talk about the lyrics in these songs. I feel like in this song it's very prevalent. I think in Ghost is the other song of hers that is like illustrates how much feeling her voice holds and like
Mm.
how much she communicates that.
Mhm.
In this song, like you can hear in the second half of the chorus, like she comes in a little bit harder with the drums and I want to believe that you have a good heart. Oh,
Mm.
um,
Mm.
and you can hear her like she's physically moved back from the mic. I think to allow for her to be a bit louder and to
Mm.
really illustrate that like there's more feeling in this part of the song or this needs to be sung louder. It can't be, it's not going to come across the way that I want it to if I do it in a very controlled and like how they would normally do it in like a studio session or something like that.
Oh, I want to believe that you've got a good heart. Oh, I want to believe that you've got a good heart. I want to believe that you've got a good heart.
But yeah, and then of course like the lyrics of this song talking about was it the way that I stood so still and never moved? Like changing yourself to be more accepted by others or to be more palatable for other people was something that I didn't even realize I was doing until after I was like in college. Yeah. And then just like wanting to believe that people are good and that they have good hearts, kind of like the main theme of the song. I feel like is a big debate in society of like, is it better to be more gracious and be disappointed or be disappointed, like be hurt more? Or like, is it safer to be cynical and to not be as
Mm.
open, but you
Mhm.
get hurt less?
Right.
And
Right.
it's been really interesting for me as an adult to see like where people kind of fall in that scheme of things.
Totally.
And
Totally.
of course, like your experiences are gonna help
Mhm.
dictate like where you decide to go. But I don't
Mhm.
know. I feel like I have so many examples of people who fall like really far, like on one end and really far on the other. People who are like huge cynics and like It doesn't seem like they have super joyful lives, but like they're happy with it. And then I have other people who give people the benefit of the doubt and give people grace, but they're also like, they're very sensitive people, and they cry a lot and they get hurt a lot. And
yeah, I mean, I think that's really, I mean, the essence of everything we're talking about is, which one would you want? Do you want to live in your head, or do you want to live in your heart? And of course we can find some sort of balance there. But I think that's a big trade-off, right? But what I found about cynicism, right, of living in cynicism, which I have for much of my life, is it feels like you're protective, but really it's like you've built a wall around the pain that's around your heart, because and you're holding on to the people who did that to you in your mind, and because you built a wall around this pain, you are hanging out with it 24/7. It's like you're suffering more than you ever would if you just got your heart broken. And I think that's really the biggest tragedy, is not so much getting our heart broken, but losing our hearts. Losing ourselves, losing the Scrooge, right? Like living like him. And it is.
Yeah.
It is safer. It does feel safer to be like, oh, look at those people out there, trying, how stupid,
Yeah.
But it's really a miserable existence,
Oh yeah. I mean, that's essentially what I was doing, shutting myself in my room and being so sad for all that time. Was like, this is not enjoyable for me, but it's much safer to do this than to go out and, be vulnerable and take risks.
So it really feels like the only thing we need to know about having a heart is that, yes, it breaks, and yes, it's okay that it breaks, and there's nothing wrong with any of it. If we know it's okay to go through heartbreak, then we can keep playing the game. But I think what happens to most of us is something hurts us along the way, and it hurts so bad that we say, I'm not going to play anymore. That was too deep. I don't want to risk that again,
Yeah.
But like I said, then you're just stuck in whatever that was. You see the whole world through that trauma, if you will. So there's one question I ask all my guests, which is, if you could go back to that time, early 2021, and deliver yourself a message, something that would have really helped you at the time, what would it be?
Probably that life is like equally hard and rewarding, and it's like set up that way on purpose. Yeah. And just to not be afraid of love, not be afraid of like loving other people, even not being afraid of loving people too much or coming on too strong, and not being afraid of like receiving love, because again, a concept that is like somehow new to me, but that like, like you're gonna hurt people, like it's gonna happen, you can't really avoid it. And it's gonna be okay. Life will go on, and you'll repair and kind of like find your way out of it.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, and it feels to me like there's a message around worthiness there too, right? Of like, don't be afraid of love, and you're worthy of it. You deserve it. Yes, you're gonna hurt people. Billions of people all throughout history have all played this game. But that never means that you don't deserve to be loved at all times. It's actually, the truth is that it's really when we're feeling unloved that we really do the most damage to other people.
I would agree.
Yeah. So if we don't want to hurt people, the best thing we could do is love and be loved.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah. Thank you for having me. I was so tickled, as my grandma would say, when you asked me about this. And I feel like this is one of those things that I'm like, all right, it's like, I love music so much for a reason, and I would talk about this kind of stuff all day long if I could.